Hi everyone, welcome back to a new video. This time I am going to explain the cultivation levels in Battle Through the Heavens Donghua. I noticed the older video lacked some important content, so it would be better to use a new video to cover all the points so that you can enjoy watching this awesome Donghua. Dou Realms. This is a ranking according to how strong the person is. In this land whoever has strength, has dignity. Without strength you are nothing. As you train your Dou Qi level you gain status and class. Within each Dou Qi class there are levels indicated as stars. When you reach 9 stars you have the potential to advance your class. E.g., a 9-star Dou Zhe will advance to Dou Shi with his next Dou Qi increase/breakthrough. The gap between each star will increase as one advances to higher classes and the difficulty of advancing would also increase. 0. Dou Zhi Qi, Dou Disciple. Dou Zhi Qi was essential towards being a Dou Zhe. Dou Zhi Qi is split into 10 different stages, and when the body acquires 10 stages of Dou Zhi Qi, it can better condense the Dou Zhi vortex, becoming a well-respected Dou Zhe. The 8th to the 9th Dou Qi is the beginning of Dou Qi bottleneck stage. 1. Dou Zhe, Dou Practitioner. Dou Zhe and 9 Dou Qi had different natures. The energy assimilated before becoming a Dou Zhe was actually called Dou Zhi Qi. After becoming a Dou Zhe, the assimilated energy was now known as true Dou Qi. Though there was but a one-word difference between their names, the true difference was more like comparing heaven to earth, completely incomparable. After making the breakthrough to become a Dou Zhe, one would possess the qualifications to practice a Qi method. After practicing a technique, the attribute less milky white Dou Qi within the body would change into the same attribute as the practice technique. One did not need too much time for the first Dou Qi change, barely 2 hours. 2. Dou Shi, Dou Master. Manipulating the Dou Qi into an energy cloak that was attached to the body was the mark of a Dou Shi. This energy cloak not only strengthened the owner's defense, speed and attack, it also improved the owner's absorption of energy from his or her surroundings so that the energy exhausted during a fight would be supplemented. Hence, almost every Dou Shi's first action during a battle would be to call upon this Dou Qi cloak. The vortex of a Dou Zhe was like a balloon while the Dou Qi was like the air that was contained within the balloon. This balloon had a critical point that belonged to it, and once the Dou Qi it contained reached the point where it was full, it would no longer be able to contain any excess Dou Qi. If one wanted to forcefully push more in, the vortex would pop like a balloon and explode with a bang. When promoting from a Dou Zhe to a Dou Shi, the biggest benefit was that the filled Dou Qi in the balloon would undergo a transformation, changing into droplets of liquid energy with far denser, more complex, and purer energy than just simple Dou Qi. Once the Dou Qi underwent the transformation, the quality and quantity of Dou Qi contained within the balloon would instantly expand tremendously. Hence, by having this enormous Dou Qi storage, a Dou Shi was naturally far superior, a Dou Zhe could just not compare. In addition, with regards to the class and purity of their Dou Qi, they were entirely different. A Dou Qi cloak, the symbol of a Dou Shi, was one of the most practical skills of a Dou Shi. Moreover, the Dou Qi cloaks that Dou Zhe had summoned out did not have any effect on speed, defense, attack etc. Only after becoming a Dou Shi would the cloak that was summoned out be equipped with this ability to aid in battle, something that all Dou Zhes coveted. 3. The Dou Shi, Dou Grandmaster. On the Dou Qi continent, most people, upon reaching the Dou Shi, would be able to emit Dou Qi out of their body. For example, they could use their Dou Qi to cover their weapons and greatly increase their offensive strength. Materializing Dou Qi could only be achieved by those who had attained at least the Dou Shi level. Anyone that became a Dou Shi was at least a power to be reckoned with. With that kind of strength, most places would probably rush for recruitment. This little thing was the most crucial object to becoming a Dou Shi. The strong people of the Dou Shi class normally called it Dou Crystal. In the eyes of many strong people, only when one possessed a Dou Crystal could one be considered to have truly stepped into the hall of Dou Qi training. This little thing was a crystal formed by all the Dou Qi contained within one's body. Within it, it contained a large amount of energy that would shock people. 4. Dou Ling, Dou Spirit. Dou Qi agglomerating into objects, the mark of a Dou Ling. It was a specialized ability of a strong person at the Dou Ling class or above, just like the Dou Qi cloak of a Dou Shi, and the Dou Qi armor of a Dou Shi. The lethality of this kind of Dou Qi agglomerated item would undoubtedly have an extremely powerful effect when used in combination with Dou techniques. In the Dou Qi continent, only with the strength of a Dou Ling can one leave the ground and fly for a short distance. Only after one's strength had reached that of a Dou Wang or Dou Huang can one use the Dou Qi to form a pair of energy wings on one's back. These wings would enable them to overcome their bond to the ground and fly amongst the clouds. When they reached the Dou Ling level, they would be able to condense and form weapons and armors made completely of Dou Qi. These kinds of weapons and protections were naturally something that an ordinary weapon or armor could not compare to. Measurement method of the Dou Ling class, the urchin Dou crystal in body had initially 9 long thorns. It appeared that each time one's strength advanced once, a long energy thorn would shrink back into the sea urchin Dou crystal. According to this guess, it was likely that one would be truly able to reach the Dou Wang class when she had absorbed all of the 9 energy thorns into that sea urchin Dou crystal. 5. Dou Wang, Dou King. Dou Qi transformation into wings was basically an extremely symbolical result in the training of Dou Qi. This symbol represented a natural barrier in becoming a strong person on the continent. Everyone clearly knew that as long as one was able to transform Dou Qi into wings, it represented that one would be able to enter into the class that caused countless number of people to halt their progress, Dou Wang. The simple 2 words were the symbol which countless numbers of talented individuals had trained hard to achieve. However, the hardship that these 2 words represented caused most of the people to halt their progress before reaching that stage. Finally, these people would quietly withdraw. Dou Ling and Dou Wang were merely separated by a class. However, the difference between them was larger than any of the class differences before them. Those of the Dou Ling class or the classes before it could only squander the Dou Qi in their body to fight with others. Although people like Xiao Yan may have Dou Qi that was stronger and purer in their body, regardless of how powerful one's Dou Qi was, there would be a time when it would be exhausted and there would be a limit to its strength. As long as one entered the Dou Wang class, however, the Dou Qi in one's body would begin to respond with the nearly endless majestic energy in the vast outside world and vice versa. It would maneuver this energy, transforming it for his own use. It was not impossible for that terrifying energy to tear the mountains and split the ground. From this, it was sufficient to see the difference between the two. One relied on the strength of one's body while the other maneuvered the natural energy. At a glance it would be obvious just which was stronger, and which was weaker. Normally speaking, as long as one was able to rely on one's own Dou Qi to agglomerate into a pair of wings, one would be able to be called a strong person who would definitely become a Dou Wang. If one could agglomerate a pair of Dou Qi wings and pause or even fly for a period of time in mid-air, that person would be a true strong Dou Wang. However, the precondition of all of these was the strength of the original body. Relying on some ability of one's Qi method was not included in this category. 6. Dou Huang, Dou Emperor. When one reached the Dou Huang class, one could already use the Dou Qi in one's body to resonate with natural energy during battle. After that, one could control these energies and unleash an incomparably terrifying force. This was also the reason why only Dou Huang possessed a destructive force that horrified people. The training of a Dou practitioner started off with training the body first. After the body was trained until it reached the pinnacle, the Dou Qi in one's body would be able to resonate with the natural energy of the same affinity and finally achieve the aim of controlling it. All Dou practitioners, nearly without exception, felt both respect and yearning in their hearts toward this realm. Before entering this realm, one person may be able to block 10, block 100, block 1,000, but the strength of a person would always reach a point when it was exhausted. Only by reaching the realm of controlling the natural energy could the idea of one person taking on 10,000 not be an illusion like the moon in the water of the flower in the mirror. Ending as it began, tens of thousands of soldiers would all turn to ashes. Of course, nothing was ever absolute. There were also some strong people who gave up the opportunity to resonate with the natural energy. They chose to repeatedly strengthen their own flesh. Once they had trained their physical flesh until it transformed, their punches and kicks could break the land and shatter space. Their destruction strength would not be smaller than controlling the natural energy. Instead, it could be even greater. However, just by strengthening one's flesh, the extent of difficulty of the training would be even greater than that of the former. Moreover, the intense pain that training one's flesh created made it really difficult for people whose mind was not firm to persist on. The advancement from a Dou Wang to a Dou Huang was not an ordinary matter. The advancement to this class required an unusually great amount of energy. Such a majestic amount of energy was naturally not something that could be achieved within a short period of time. Hence, one could only rely on accumulating energy for a long time in order to complete the transformation process. The gap between a Dou Wang and a Dou Huang is extremely large. Normally speaking, even if one possessed the strength to break through, one would require half a year or even a year in order to truly be able to undergo the transformation. 7. Dou Zong, Dou Ancestor. Dou Zong, the true point when one could be considered a genuine expert on the continent. Only by successfully reaching this level would one gain the prerequisite that allowed one to survive in the Central Plains. Walking through the air was a unique indicator of an elite Dou Zong. If one's strength had reached the level of a Dou Zong, almost every portion of one's body, including even a strand of hair, would be able to become a sharp killing weapon. There was a massive gap between every star within the Dou Zong class. Hence, the classification within the expert Dou Zongs were a little more detailed in the Central Plains. Every star was divided into 4 levels. They were entry, intermediate, advance, and peak. However, such differentiation was too subtle. Hence, very few people would measure another in such a manner. However, it was quite useful when using it to measure one's own strength. A 9-star Dou Huang might only have a 1-star gap with a Dou Zong, but this 1 star was enough to cause a countless number of outstanding individuals to stop at this level forever, all the way until they die. They can use spatial strength, which is a mysterious strength that one needed to reach the Dou Zong class in order to be barely able to control. Before reaching that class, even an expert at the peak of the Dou Huang class did not possess the qualification to control it. 8. Dou Zun, Dou Venerate. Dou Zun. That was a level that was even further and more frightening than a Dou Zong. At that level, one was already a top person on the continent. Their methods were far from what an elite Dou Zong could compare with. They were actually able to use space, something which was ethereal and invisible, to do whatever they pleased. After advancing to a Dou Zun, one is able to continuously absorb the natural energy and turn it into Dou Qi in her body. They can also train while traveling. The gap between each star within the Dou Zun class was far from what an ordinary person could imagine. It was a kind of extremely fixed hierarchical system. It was quite difficult for someone in the Dou Zun class to challenge another of a higher level. The moment the Dou Qi within the body of an expert at the peak of the Dou Zun class showed signs of being full and could no longer be increased was the moment the 9 changes began. One would then need to shrink and suppress the Dou Qi within one's body. Only then would the interior of one's body have enough space to accept new Dou Qi. One needed to perform this compression once the Dou Qi became filled again. This cycle would repeat and only after 9 suppressions would it reach a complete state. The Dou Qi within one's body would experience a change in quality under each compression. Only then would one cross over the unmeasurable sky-like gap and advance to the Sheng class. Due to this, some of the experts, who had reached this stage, would describe the training hidden at the peak of the Dou Zun class as 9 changes. One could only become a Sheng, saint, after 9 changes. It was easy to talk about these 9 changes, but they would really test one's limits. Just imagine the frightening amount of Dou Qi an expert at the peak of the Dou Zun class could contain. That needed to be filled and filled 9 times. Such a requirement was indeed worthy of the description, horrifying. A Dou Zun can create wormholes through space using their spatial strength to travel great distances in short time. 8.5. Ban Sheng, half-saint. Ban Sheng. This level was called an abyss of despair by many experts at the peak of the Dou Zun class. Most of the experts in this world who had reached the peak of the Dou Zun class ended up halting at the edge of this Ban Sheng class. Regardless of how they trained, they were unable to truly step into this so-called Ban Sheng class. Only by stepping into the Ban Sheng class would one be able to possess the qualification to step into the Dou Sheng class. One could even say that Ban Sheng was the most important foundation stone before one stepped into the Dou Sheng class. If one was unable to enter the Ban Sheng level, one could forget about ever becoming a genuine elite Dou Sheng. While Dou Di was gradually becoming a legend that existed only in history, the simple Sheng word represented the peak of this entire world. An elite Dou Zun could be considered to be top experts of this continent. However, the top ultimately did not represent the peak. The peak of this world belonged to those experts of an even higher class. Ban Sheng. Although there was a ban half word, it was still related to the Sheng word, which represented the peak. This was a transforming leap. There was only a one-word difference between a Ban Sheng and a Dou Sheng, but there was a relatively frightening gap between the two. Although an elite Ban Sheng could also be called a Dou Sheng since they possessed a strength that far surpassed that of an elite peak Dou Zun, they could only be strictly described as a fake Sheng. Only when one truly reached the 1-star level could one be called a genuine Dou Sheng. The Ban Sheng class was separated into the initial, intermediate, and high levels. These levels appeared small, but it was difficult if one wished to leap across them. 9. Dou Sheng, Dou Saint. A peak existence among even top-tier powerhouses, the Dou Sheng is a realm so broken that logic starts to fail here. A 1-star Dou Sheng can easily overpower dozens of Ban Sheng, a 2-star can easily defeat a 1-star, and so on. Upon attaining the 6th star, a practitioner can open a separate realm for others to inhabit, and the 7th can utilize all the Dou Qi within those realms, effectively becoming the world. A 9-star Dou Sheng is representative of the peak of the world, with no other existence coming close to that. Any casual action of a Dou Sheng can demolish cities, shatter mountains, and destroy space itself. Any experts who reach the Dou Sheng class are basically standing on the peak of the Dou Qi continent. At this level, one would have already surpassed the ordinary and would have stepped into the holy level. The strength that one would possess would naturally be far from what an ordinary person can imagine. Opening a realm where people could live is an indicator of an elite Dou Sheng. The reason an elite Dou Sheng was so powerful was not because of the great strength of their Dou Qi. Instead, it was because they could maneuver the naturally energy without restraint to attack and defend. They are able to create realms on their own so that people could live inside. Just imagine someone strong enough to create their own worlds. 10. Dou Di, Dou God. Dou Di is the highest realm of Dou Qi cultivation in the Dou Qi continent, equivalent to the sovereign stage in the Great Thousand World. A Dou Di has the ability to change their own bloodline, benefiting their descendants, and can single-handedly revive an entire race. They can absorb the heavens and earth into their bodies, forming the Dou Di body towering tens of thousands of zhangs high, with power capable of piercing through the heavens. Dou Di, this was a form to address the ruler of this world. The value of anything even the least bit related to this name would soar. This point was something that could be identified from just watching the Gu clan. The blood of a Dou Di flowed in the bodies of the members of the Gu clan. This had resulted in the current position of the Gu clan on the Dou Qi continent. Although no one dared call it unique, it could definitely be considered among the peak. Anything that was even the least bit related with the word D in this world would be synonymous with being strong. It did not matter whether it was a Dou D or a D-tier medicinal pill. All of these were supreme in the eyes of everyone. Similarly, the D-state soul also belonged in this category. Dou D. D-tier medicinal pill. D-state soul. Amongst the three types of D, there was a much higher possibility of one reaching the third given the current condition of the continent. After all, this level did not require one to absorb the so-called origin Qi. However, this did not mean that one could easily advance into the D-state soul. It is rumored that if a person is able to reach the Dou D class, their bloodline will undergo a change. His descendants will benefit as a result. There were quite a number of Dou D clans in the ancient times. Although they could be considered humans, they possessed a rich talent when it came to training. Some of those who were lucky might even inherit some Dou D's abilities through their bloodline. However, such a thing is extremely rare and will completely depend on one's luck. These clans that possess an ancient Dou D bloodline greatly discriminate against outsiders. Due to them needing to maintain the purity of their bloodline, even if they were to marry an ordinary human, they would definitely choose an extremely outstanding person. There were quite a number of clans in the ancient times who possessed the bloodline of a Dou D. However, with the flow of time, it seems that hardly any remained. The survivors are called the extremely mysterious ancient clans. The bloodline of a Dou D might be powerful, but it does not last forever. There is a time when it will run out. To continue preserving the bloodline, another Dou D needs to appear and provide the bloodline with energy and life. Those who possess the Dou D bloodline indeed have a smooth training path. However, this speed halts just before the Dou Sheng class. Even though an ancient clan like the Gu clan possesses many elite Dou Zuns, there aren't many people who can step into the Dou Sheng class. If one wishes to advance to that level, one can only rely on oneself. At such a moment, the Dou D bloodline becomes a burden. Those who have the first generation Dou D bloodline would be blessed with the greatest benefit. Hence, if a new ancient clan had appeared, it would definitely turn the Dou Qi continent into an uproar. The entire Dou Qi continent viewed the continuation of one's bloodline as extremely important. This was especially the case for these top experts. They greatly wanted their bloodline to continue. An elite Dou D could incorporate the world in their bodies. At that time, they would be the world. Just the lift of a hand could destroy the universe. Its might was extremely great and terrifying. This huge body was not formed from energy. Instead, it was a firm actual body. One could just imagine how terrifying the aura of a 100,000-kilometer body was. This kind of ability is referred to by the others as the Dou D body. This was because one could only use it after reaching the Dou D class. That's all I had to explain as part of this video. Let me know if any questions or suggestions. Thank you for watching and keep the support as always.